My name is Isabella Martinez, and I am 28 years old. Last month, my mother called me the most useless child she ever had right in front of my entire extended family at my cousin's wedding. She said I would never amount to anything unlike my perfect older sister who became a doctor. What my mother did not know was that I had been secretly funding her luxury lifestyle for 3 years. The moment she humiliated me was the moment I decided to pull every single financial thread that kept her world intact. But before we dive into how I systematically dismantled my mother's facade and exposed the truth that shattered our family forever, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like button if you have ever felt underestimated by family, and make sure to subscribe because this story gets absolutely wild. Trust me, the revenge I served was colder than my mother's heart, and the karma that came back to bite her was sweeter than any victory I could have imagined. Growing up as the younger daughter in the Martinez household meant living in the shadow of my sister Carmen's achievements. Carmen graduated valedictorian, got into Harvard Medical School, and became a successful cardiologist. Meanwhile, I chose a different path, starting my own digital marketing agency right out of college. While Carmen was saving lives, I was apparently wasting mine, according to my mother, Elena Martinez. The wedding incident happened on a beautiful Saturday evening in June. My cousin Maria was getting married, and the entire extended family had gathered at an upscale venue in downtown Chicago. I had driven in from my home in Milwaukee, excited to celebrate and catch up with relatives I had not seen in months. I wore an elegant navy blue dress that I had saved up for, and I felt confident walking into the reception hall. Everything started normally. The ceremony was beautiful, the food was excellent, and the family conversations flowed easily. I was chatting with my Aunt Rosa about my business when my mother approached our table. She had been drinking wine throughout the evening, but she did not seem particularly intoxicated. What happened next still replays in my mind, like a broken record. My cousin's new husband had just finished giving a speech about family support and love when my mother decided to share her own thoughts. She stood up, grabbed the microphone that was being passed around for toasts, and looked directly at me. "You know," she began, her voice carrying across the silent reception hall, "I have 2 daughters. One became a doctor and saves lives every day. The other one plays on computers and thinks she runs a business." The room grew uncomfortably quiet. "Isabella has always been the most useless child we have. She will never amount to anything meaningful like her sister." The silence that followed was deafening. Every eye in that room turned to look at me, waiting to see how I would react. My face burned with embarrassment and rage, but I remained seated. My aunt reached over and squeezed my hand under the table. Carmen, who was sitting across the room, looked mortified but said nothing. My father stared down at his plate, unwilling to defend me or confront his wife. I excused myself from the table and went to the bathroom, where I spent 15 minutes staring at my reflection in the mirror, trying to process what had just happened. When I returned to my seat, conversations had resumed, but I could feel people stealing glances at me. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of forced smiles and polite small talk. The drive back to Milwaukee that night gave me plenty of time to think. My mother's words echoed in my head, but gradually, my hurt transformed into something colder and more calculating. I began to remember details about my family's lifestyle that had never quite added up. My parents lived in a beautiful house in an expensive suburb of Chicago. They drove luxury cars, took elaborate vacations to Europe every year, and my mother wore designer clothes and jewelry that should have been far beyond their means. My father worked as a middle manager at a manufacturing company, and while his salary was decent, it should not have been enough to support their lavish lifestyle. Carmen, despite being a successful doctor, was drowning in student loans and had mentioned multiple times that she could barely afford her own apartment, let alone help our parents financially. So where was all their money coming from? When I got home that night, I could not sleep. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and started going through my business finances. What I discovered made my blood run cold. 3 years earlier, when my mother had called crying about potential foreclosure on their house, I had stepped in to help. What started as a temporary loan to cover their mortgage had somehow evolved into me paying nearly all of their major expenses. I had been sending money so regularly that I had stopped keeping track of exactly how much. I spent the next several hours creating a detailed spreadsheet. The numbers were staggering. Over the past 3 years, I had transferred over $90,000 to my parents. I had paid their mortgage payments, their car payments, their credit card bills, their utility bills, and even funded their expensive vacations. The most infuriating part was how they had manipulated me into this situation. Every few months my mother would call with some financial emergency. The roof needed repairs, my father's job was unstable, they had unexpected medical expenses. Each time, she would emphasize how much they needed my help and how grateful they were to have such a successful daughter who could support them. But apparently I was the useless child who would never amount to anything. The manipulation went deeper than just the money. They had convinced me to keep the financial arrangements secret from Carmen, claiming it would make her feel guilty about not being able to help due to her student loans. They had also asked me not to mention it to other family members, saying they were embarrassed about needing assistance. Looking back, I realized they had isolated me financially while publicly diminishing my achievements. They took my money while giving my sister all the credit and recognition. They benefited from my success while telling everyone I was a failure. As dawn broke over Milwaukee, I closed my laptop and made myself a cup of coffee. I had spent the entire night documenting 3 years of financial manipulation and emotional abuse. But more importantly, I had spent the night planning exactly how I was going to expose the truth and take back control of my life. My mother thought I was useless. She was about to learn just how useful I really was to her comfortable lifestyle. And she was about to discover what happened when she bit the hand that literally fed her. The Monday morning after the wedding, I woke up with a clarity I had not experienced in years. The emotional fog that had clouded my judgment for so long had lifted, replaced by a cold, calculating focus. I called in sick to my own company, something I had never done before, and spent the day creating what I would later call my Operation Truth Plan. First, I needed to gather evidence. I printed out 3 years' worth of bank statements, transaction records, and email correspondence with my parents about their financial needs. I organized everything chronologically, highlighting patterns of manipulation and deception. The evidence was overwhelming, but I wanted to be absolutely thorough. I discovered that my mother had been lying about virtually everything. The roof repair emergency. I found social media posts from that same week showing her shopping for designer handbags. The medical expenses, cross-referencing with their insurance statements, showed they had met their deductible months earlier. My father's job instability, company records showed he had actually received a promotion and raise during that period. But the most damning evidence came from something I had not expected to find. While reviewing old emails, I noticed that my mother had been forwarding our financial correspondence to someone else. After some digging, I discovered she had been bragging to her sister about how easy it was to get money from me whenever they needed it. In one particularly cruel email to my aunt, she wrote, "Isabella is so desperate for our approval that she will pay for anything if I tell her we need help. She thinks she is being the responsible daughter, but really, she is just making up for being such a disappointment in every other way." Reading those words felt like being punched in the stomach, but they also crystallized my resolve. This was not just about money anymore. This was about systematic, emotional manipulation designed to keep me financially enslaved while publicly humiliated. I spent Tuesday researching legal options. I consulted with a lawyer about the possibility of recovering some of the money I had given them, but the reality was sobering. Since the transfers had been voluntary gifts in response to their requests for help, proving fraud would be nearly impossible. However, the lawyer did confirm that I had every legal right to stop all financial support immediately. Wednesday was devoted to strategic planning. I realized that simply cutting off the money would not be enough. My parents would likely find a way to manipulate the narrative, painting me as the ungrateful daughter who abandoned them in their time of need. I needed to expose the truth in a way that would prevent them from spinning the story. I decided to document everything through a series of recorded conversations. I called my mother that evening ostensibly to check in after the wedding incident. "Isabella, honey," she said, her voice saccharine sweet. "I hope you were not too upset about what I said at the wedding. You know how I get when I have been drinking." "Actually, Mom, I wanted to talk to you about something," I replied, my phone recording every word. "I have been thinking about our financial arrangement, and I am starting to feel like maybe I am enabling some unhealthy spending habits." The change in her tone was immediate and dramatic. "What do you mean by that? We have told you how grateful we are for your help. Do you want us to lose the house? Do you want your father and me to end up homeless? I just think maybe it is time for you and Dad to take more responsibility for your own finances," I said carefully. What followed was a 20-minute tirade that revealed the true extent of her manipulative mindset. She accused me of being selfish, ungrateful, and cruel. She claimed that successful children had an obligation to support their parents. She reminded me of everything they had supposedly sacrificed for me growing up, conveniently ignoring the fact that Carmen had received the same support without any current financial obligations. Most importantly, she confirmed several key facts that I needed on record. She admitted that they had been using my money for vacations and luxury purchases. She acknowledged that my father's job was stable and well-paying. She even slipped up and mentioned that Carmen had no idea about the extent of my financial contributions, proving that the secrecy had been intentional manipulation rather than consideration for my sister's feelings. Thursday, I had a similar conversation with my father. He was less aggressive than my mother, but equally revealing. He actually seemed somewhat ashamed of their deception, admitting that they had gotten carried away with spending my money and that my mother had convinced him it was acceptable because I was doing so well financially. By Friday, I had hours of recorded conversations documenting their manipulation, lies, and sense of entitlement, but I still needed to address the public humiliation aspect of their behavior. The wedding incident had happened in front of dozens of family members, and I needed to correct the narrative they had created about my worth and success. I spent the weekend crafting a detailed letter that I planned to send to every family member who had witnessed my mother's speech. The letter would include selected excerpts from my evidence explaining the true financial dynamics of our family and my actual level of success as a business owner. But first, I had one more conversation to have. On Sunday evening, I called Carmen. "Carmen," I said, after we had exchanged pleasantries, "I need to tell you something about Mom and Dad's finances, and I think you are going to be surprised." Over the next hour, I explained everything to my sister. Initially, she was skeptical, thinking I might be exaggerating or misunderstanding the situation. But when I shared some of the evidence and played portions of my recorded conversations, her shock was genuine. "Isabella, I had no idea," she said, her voice filled with a mixture of guilt and anger. "All this time, I thought they were struggling financially. I have been feeling terrible that I could not help them more because of my student loans. And meanwhile, they were calling you useless while you were paying for everything." Carmen's support gave me the final piece of confidence I needed to move forward with my plan. She agreed to help me confront our parents and ensure that the truth came out properly. Monday morning arrived, and I was ready to execute the first phase of Operation Truth. I had evidence, I had a plan, and I had an ally. My mother thought I was the most useless child they had. She was about to discover just how effectively this useless child could dismantle the comfortable life she had built on lies and manipulation. The foundation of their deception was about to crumble, and I was going to make sure everyone in our family witnessed the collapse. Monday morning marked the beginning of what I would later refer to as the most empowering week of my adult life. I arrived at my office early and cleared my schedule for the next few days, delegating urgent tasks to my team and explaining that I had a family emergency to handle. The irony was not lost on me that the family emergency was of my own making. My first call was to Carmen, who had spent the weekend processing everything I had told her. She was ready to stand with me, but she wanted to understand exactly what I planned to do. "I am not just going to cut off their money and walk away," I explained to her over coffee at a cafe near her hospital. "They have spent 3 years systematically destroying my reputation while building their lifestyle on my success. I want everyone in our family to understand what really happened here." Carmen nodded slowly. "What do you need from me?" "I need you to be there when I confront them. I need a witness who can confirm that everything I am saying is true. And I need you to help me make sure that the family understands this is not just some petty financial dispute." We spent the morning planning our approach. Carmen had always been the diplomatic one in our family, and her medical training had taught her how to deliver difficult news with clarity and compassion. She would help me present the facts in a way that was undeniable but not unnecessarily cruel. That afternoon, I made one of the most difficult calls of my life. I contacted my cousin Maria, whose wedding had been the scene of my public humiliation. "Maria," I said after congratulating her again on her marriage, "I need to apologize for the drama that happened at your reception. What my mother said was completely inappropriate, and I am sorry that your special day was tainted by family conflict." Maria was gracious and understanding, but I could hear the curiosity in her voice. "Isabella, to be honest, a lot of us were shocked by what your mother said. Everyone knows how successful your business is. We were all confused about why she would say those things. This gave me the opening I needed. Actually, that is what I wanted to talk to you about. There are some things about my family situation that people do not know, and I think it is time for the truth to come out. Would you be willing to listen to the whole story?" Over the next hour, I shared an abbreviated version of my discovery with Maria. I explained about the financial manipulation, the lies about their circumstances, and the systematic way they had undermined my reputation while benefiting from my success. Maria listened in stunned silence. "Isabella, this is horrible," she said finally. "Your mother has been telling everyone for years that you were struggling with your business and that Carmen was the only successful daughter. People have been feeling sorry for your parents, thinking they had one daughter who was thriving and one who was barely getting by." This revelation hit me like a physical blow. Not only had my parents been taking my money and publicly humiliated me, but they had been spreading lies about my professional failure throughout our extended family. The manipulation was even more extensive than I had realized. Maria agreed to help me set the record straight with the family, but she suggested that I needed to be strategic about how I revealed the truth. "If you just send out a mass email with evidence, people might think you are being vindictive or trying to start drama," she warned. "You need to let the truth speak for itself." That evening, I called my Aunt Rosa, who had been sitting next to me during the wedding speech. Rosa had always been like a second mother to me, and I knew she had been hurt by what my mother had said. "Mija," she said warmly, when she heard my voice, "I have been worried about you since the wedding. What your mother said was very hurtful." I took a deep breath and launched into my story. Rosa listened without interrupting, occasionally making small sounds of shock or disapproval. When I finished, there was a long silence. "Isabella," she said finally, her voice heavy with emotion, "your mother has been lying to all of us. She has been telling the family that you were having financial problems and that she and your father were worried about you. She said that Carmen was helping to support you because your business was failing. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, and the picture they revealed was even uglier than I had imagined. My parents had not just been taking my money while calling me useless. They had been actively destroying my reputation throughout our extended family while positioning themselves as concerned parents dealing with a disappointing daughter." Rosa was furious. "This is unacceptable, Mija. You have been supporting them while they tell everyone that you are a failure, and they have been taking credit for Carmen's success while hiding your contributions. This is not just about money. This is about honor and truth." By Tuesday evening, I had spoken with 6 family members, including my cousins, aunts, and uncles. Each conversation revealed new layers of deception. My parents had been telling different lies to different people, but the common theme was always that I was struggling while Carmen was successful, and that they were disappointed in my lack of achievement. The family members I spoke with were universally shocked and supportive. Several of them admitted that they had always wondered how my parents could afford their lifestyle on my father's salary, but they had assumed there was family, money, or investments they did not know about. Wednesday morning, I received an unexpected call from my uncle Roberto, Rosa's husband. "Isabella, your aunt told me everything. I want you to know that some of us had suspicions that something was not right with your parents' story. Your business has clearly been successful, but they kept talking about how worried they were about your finances. It never made sense. Roberto offered to help me in any way he could, and he had a suggestion that I had not considered. You should talk to your grandmother before you confront your parents. Abuela has always been suspicious of your mother's stories about you. I think she would want to know the truth. My grandmother, Elena's mother-in-law, had always been a formidable woman who valued honesty above all else. She was 85 years old, but still sharp as a razor, and she had never been particularly fond of my mother's dramatic tendencies. I drove to visit Abuela that afternoon. She welcomed me with warm hugs and her usual questions about my work and health. When I began to tell her the truth about my parents' financial situation, her expression grew increasingly stern. Mija, she said when I finished, I always knew something was wrong with your mother's stories. She would call me crying about money problems, then show up wearing expensive jewelry. She would complain about your father's job, then talk about their vacation plans. I knew she was lying about something, but I did not know she was lying about you. Abuela's support meant everything to me. She was the matriarch of our family, and her opinion carried significant weight with everyone. She agreed to be present when I confronted my parents, and she made it clear that she would not tolerate any attempts to manipulate the situation. By Thursday, I had built a coalition of family support that I had never expected. Carmen Maria, Rosa, Roberto, and Abuela were all ready to stand with me when I revealed the truth. They had all agreed that the lies and manipulation had gone too far, and that my parents needed to face consequences for their behavior. But before I could confront my parents directly, I had one more strategic move to make. I needed to ensure that they could not simply deny everything or claim that I was misunderstanding the situation. I needed to create a scenario where the truth would be undeniable and the consequences would be immediate. The stage was set for a confrontation that would either repair our family relationships through honesty or permanently shatter the facade my parents had spent years constructing. Either way, the truth was finally going to come out, and everyone would see exactly who had been useless in this family dynamic. Friday arrived with the weight of inevitability. I had spent the week building my case and gathering allies, but now came the moment of truth. I had invited my parents to dinner at my apartment under the pretense of wanting to apologize for any tension since the wedding. They accepted eagerly, probably thinking they had successfully guilt-tripped me back into submission. I spent Friday morning preparing my apartment like a courtroom. I set up my laptop with all the evidence organized and ready to display. I had printed copies of bank statements, email exchanges, and transcripts of our recorded conversations. Carmen arrived an hour before our parents, followed by Abuela, Rosa, and Uncle Roberto. The support of my family gave me strength, but I was still nervous about what was about to unfold. When my parents arrived at 6 o'clock, they seemed pleased to see the extended family gathered. My mother hugged everyone warmly and commented on how nice it was to have a family dinner. My father appeared slightly suspicious of the setup, but he remained cordial. We began with small talk over appetizers. My mother dominated the conversation as usual, talking about their recent shopping trip and their plans for another European vacation. The irony was almost unbearable listening to her describe purchases made with my money while sitting across from family members who now knew the truth. After we finished eating, I stood up and cleared my throat. I asked everyone here tonight because I have something important to discuss with Mom and Dad, and I wanted witnesses present. My mother's expression shifted slightly, but she maintained her smile. What is this about, sweetheart? I opened my laptop and turned the screen toward them. This is about the $90,000 I have given you over the past 3 years, and the lies you have been telling our family about my success and your financial situation. The silence in the room was deafening. My father went pale, and my mother's face cycled through several emotions before settling on defensive anger. I do not know what you think you have discovered, but you are being dramatic and ungrateful, my mother said, her voice rising. We never forced you to help us financially. You offered because you are our daughter and you wanted to support your family. I clicked to the next screen, which showed a detailed breakdown of every payment I had made. You are right that I offered to help initially, But that was before I realized you were lying about needing help while simultaneously telling our family that I was a failure who could barely support myself. Carmen stood up beside me. Isabella has shown me all the evidence, Mom. We know about the manipulation, the lies about Dad's job stability, the fake emergencies, and the way you have been portraying Isabella to the rest of the family. My mother turned to Carmen with a shocked expression. You cannot possibly believe these accusations. Your sister has always been dramatic and attention-seeking. She is trying to turn the family against us because she is angry about some silly comment I made at the wedding. Abuela slowly rose from her chair, her voice carrying the authority of her 85 years. Elena, I have listened to everything Isabella has told us, and I have seen the evidence. You have been lying to this family for years, taking money from one daughter while giving all the credit to the other. You should be ashamed of yourself. The confrontation escalated quickly from there. My mother began cycling through different defense strategies: denial, minimization, deflection, and finally attack. She accused me of being vindictive and claimed that I was exaggerating the financial arrangements. She insisted that they had legitimate financial problems that I simply did not understand. That was when I played the recordings. The sound of her own voice, admitting to using my money for vacations and luxury purchases, filled the room. Her comments about me being desperate for approval, her casual dismissal of my business success, and her bragging about how easy it was to manipulate me into giving them money created a stunned silence. My father finally spoke up. Elena, stop. We both know everything Isabella is saying is true. We took advantage of her generosity and we lied to the family about our situation. This has gone too far. My mother turned on him with fury. Do not you dare take her side against me. We are her parents. She owes us support after everything we have done for her. Uncle Roberto shook his head sadly. Elena, parents do not owe their children success, and children do not owe their parents money. Isabella has been more than generous, and you repaid her kindness with lies and public humiliation. The final blow came when I revealed the extent of their deception to the extended family. I showed them the emails my mother had sent to relatives painting me as a struggling failure while Carmen was the golden child. I displayed social media posts where they had taken credit for family achievements that were actually mine, and posts showing their expensive lifestyle during the same periods they were claiming financial hardship to me. Rosa looked at my mother with disappointment. How could you do this to your own daughter? Isabella has been working so hard and achieving so much, and you have been telling all of us that she was barely surviving. You made us feel sorry for you while you were living off her success. My mother made one final attempt to control the narrative. You are all turning against me because of lies and jealousy. Isabella has always resented her sister's success, and now she is trying to destroy our family with these accusations. Carmen stood up and walked over to our mother. Mom, I love you, but what you have done to Isabella is unforgivable. She has been supporting you financially while you publicly humiliated her and lied about her success to everyone we know. I cannot defend this behavior. The evening ended with my mother storming out of the apartment, screaming about ungrateful children and family betrayal. My father lingered for a few minutes, apologizing quietly to me and promising that things would change. But the damage had been done and the truth was finally out in the open. As my family members hugged me goodbye that night, I felt a mixture of relief and sadness. Relief that the lies had been exposed and that I no longer had to carry the burden of their deception alone. Sadness that it had come to this level of family destruction, but also a growing sense of empowerment that I had finally taken control of my own narrative. The useless daughter had just proven exactly how useful she really was, and how devastating it could be when that usefulness was withdrawn. My mother would soon discover what her comfortable lifestyle actually cost, and who had really been paying the bills all along. The weekend following our family confrontation brought a silence that felt both peaceful and ominous. My phone, which usually buzzed constantly with messages and calls from my parents, remained eerily quiet. I spent Saturday morning in my garden, finally able to enjoy the simple pleasure of tending to my plants without the constant anxiety about the next financial emergency my parents might manufacture. Carmen called me Saturday afternoon with updates from her conversations with our father. He had contacted her Friday night after they left my apartment, and their discussion had revealed even more disturbing details about our mother's behavior. Isabella, Dad, told me that Mom has been planning this lifestyle expansion for months, Carmen said, her voice heavy with disappointment. She has been talking about renovating the kitchen, buying a new car, and booking an even more expensive vacation for next year. She assumed your financial support would continue indefinitely. This revelation hit me with a fresh wave of anger. My mother had not just been taking advantage of my generosity, she had been building long-term plans around my continued financial exploitation. She viewed me as a permanent funding source for her increasingly expensive tastes, all while maintaining the public fiction that I was the family disappointment. Sunday brought the first real consequences of my decision to expose the truth. My phone rang early in the morning, and I was surprised to see my mother's number on the display. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Isabella, we need to talk," she said, her voice strained but still carrying an undertone of command. "This situation has gotten completely out of hand, and you need to stop this nonsense immediately." "What nonsense would that be, Mom?" I asked calmly. "You know exactly what I mean. You have turned the entire family against your father and me, with your lies and exaggerations. Rosa called me yesterday to lecture me about honesty and family values. Your grandmother left me a voicemail saying she was disappointed in my behavior. You have destroyed our reputation over a simple misunderstanding about money." The audacity of her response was breathtaking. Even after being confronted with recorded evidence of her manipulation and lies, she was still trying to reframe the situation as my fault. "Mom, there was no misunderstanding. You took $90,000 from me while telling everyone that I was a failure. You lied about your financial situation, manipulated me into giving you money, and publicly humiliated me at Maria's wedding. These are facts, not exaggerations. We never asked you for that money," she snapped. "You offered to help us, and now you are acting like we stole from you. Good children support their parents when they are able to do so. The problem is that you have become selfish and ungrateful." I had expected this conversation, and I was prepared for it. You are right that I offered to help initially, but that help was offered based on lies about your financial situation. More importantly, our financial arrangement is ending today. I will not be sending any more money, and I will not be covering any more of your expenses. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for nearly a minute. When she spoke again, her voice had lost all pretense of maternal authority and revealed pure panic. "Isabella, you cannot be serious. We have obligations, commitments, plans that depend on your help. If you cut us off now, we could lose everything." "Then perhaps you should have considered that before you called me useless in front of our entire family," I replied. "I hope you kept receipts for all those luxury purchases, because you are going to need to return some things to cover your expenses." Monday morning brought a flurry of activity as the real-world consequences of my parents' financial mismanagement became apparent. My father called me at work, something he had never done before, to beg me to reconsider my decision. "Isabella, I know your mother handled this situation poorly, but please do not punish both of us for her mistakes," he pleaded. "We have a mortgage payment due next week, and without your help we will not be able to cover it." This was the moment I had been preparing for. "Dad, you make $65,000 a year, and Mom works part-time at the boutique. Your mortgage payment is $1,800 a month. Your household income should easily cover your basic expenses if you eliminate the luxury spending. But we have other obligations, credit card payments, the car loan for your mother's BMW, the vacation we booked for next month," he said desperately. "Those are choices you made while spending my money," I replied firmly. "You will need to figure out how to handle those obligations with your own income, just like every other family in America does." By Tuesday, my mother had moved into full crisis mode. She called Carmen crying and claiming that I was trying to destroy the family out of spite. She contacted several relatives, attempting to paint herself as the victim of my vindictive behavior. But her efforts backfired spectacularly. Rosa called me Tuesday evening to update me on my mother's damage control attempts. "Mija, your mother called me today, trying to get me to talk sense into you. She claimed that you were exaggerating about the money and that she never said those things at the wedding. When I told her that we all heard what she said and saw the evidence you showed us, she became very angry with me. The family network that my parents had relied on for emotional and social support was crumbling as quickly as their financial foundation. People who had sympathized with their supposed struggles were now angry about being deceived. Relatives who had felt sorry for them having a disappointing daughter were now disgusted by their treatment of me. Wednesday brought the most dramatic development yet. My mother showed up at my office, unannounced, demanding to speak with me immediately. My assistant tried to turn her away, but she caused such a scene in the lobby that I agreed to see her in my conference room. "Look around you, Isabella," she said, gesturing at my well-appointed office. "Look at this business you have built, this success you have achieved. Do you think you accomplished this without any support from your family? Do you think you owe us nothing for the foundation we provided?" I looked at her calmly. "Mom, you are absolutely right that I have been successful. You are also right that family support matters. But the support I needed from you was emotional encouragement and recognition of my achievements. Instead, you took my financial support while publicly undermining my success and lying about my failures. You cannot have it both ways." She tried several more approaches: guilt about abandoning family, threats about consequences, promises that things would change if I would just resume the payments. But I had heard all these tactics before during our recorded conversations, and I was immune to their effects. Thursday, I received a call from my bank's fraud department. My mother had attempted to access my account using old authorization forms I had signed years earlier when I first started helping them with their finances. The attempt had been blocked, but it confirmed my worst suspicions about her desperation and sense of entitlement. The useless daughter had successfully dismantled the empire, built on lies and manipulation. But the real reckoning was still to come, and my mother was about to discover that actions have consequences, even when you are used to avoiding them through emotional manipulation and family guilt. 3 months have passed since that explosive family dinner, and the transformation in my life has been remarkable. The constant anxiety about money that I had carried for years without even realizing it has completely disappeared. For the first time in my adult life, I am building wealth for my own future, instead of subsidizing my parents' fantasy lifestyle. My business has flourished in ways I never expected. Without the constant drain of supporting my parents' expenses, I was able to reinvest in my company, hire 2 additional employees, and expand our client services. Last month, we signed our largest contract ever with a major retail chain, and my annual revenue has increased by 40%. It turns out I had been more successful than even I realized. I just had not been keeping any of the benefits for myself. The most surprising development has been the strengthening of my relationship with Carmen. Growing up, we had always been positioned as competitors for our parents' approval, with her academic achievements constantly compared to my business pursuits. But working together to expose the truth about our family dynamics brought us closer than we had ever been. Carmen and I now have weekly dinners where we talk about everything from work challenges to our dreams for the future. She has started her own private practice, and I have been helping her with marketing and business development. For the first time, we are collaborating instead of competing, and I have discovered that my sister is not only brilliant but also funny, supportive, and genuinely interested in my success. The extended family relationships have also evolved in unexpected ways. Abuela has become one of my strongest supporters, calling me every Sunday to check on my business and my well-being. She frequently tells me how proud she is of my achievements and how sorry she is that it took so long for everyone to see the truth about my success. Rosa and Roberto have essentially adopted me as an additional daughter. They invite me to family gatherings, celebrate my business milestones, and provide the kind of unconditional emotional support that I had been craving from my parents for years. Uncle Roberto even referred 3 new clients to my company, and Rosa has been sharing my business success stories throughout her social network. My parents' situation has unfolded exactly as I predicted it would. Within 6 weeks of losing my financial support, they were forced to put their house on the market. The BMW was repossessed, and they had to cancel their planned European vacation. My mother had to find full-time employment for the first time in over a decade, and my father picked up overtime shifts to help cover their basic expenses. The most satisfying development was learning about my mother's attempts to find alternative funding sources for her lifestyle. She approached several family members asking for loans, but everyone was now aware of her previous deception and manipulation tactics. Carmen told me that our mother had even tried to convince her to take out a loan against her medical practice to help cover their expenses. My father has made genuine efforts to repair our relationship. He calls me once a month to apologize and update me on their situation. He has acknowledged that they took advantage of my generosity and that my mother's treatment of me was inexcusable. While I appreciate his attempts at reconciliation, I have made it clear that any future relationship must be based on honesty and mutual respect, not financial dependence. My mother predictably has shown no real remorse or insight into her behavior. She continues to believe that I overreacted to a minor family disagreement and that I have been vindictive in cutting off their financial support. She has made several attempts to manipulate me through guilt and emotional blackmail, but these tactics no longer have any effect on me. The most valuable lesson I learned from this experience was about the difference between supporting family and enabling dysfunction. I had convinced myself that I was being a good daughter by quietly providing financial assistance, but I was actually enabling a system of lies and manipulation that hurt everyone involved. I also learned about the importance of setting boundaries and demanding respect. For years, I had accepted being treated as the disappointing daughter because I was afraid of losing my family relationships entirely. But when I finally stood up for myself and demanded to be treated with dignity, I discovered that the people who truly loved me were willing to change their behavior. Perhaps most importantly, I learned that family is not just about blood relations. The support I received from Carmen, Abuela, Rosa, Roberto, and Maria during this difficult time showed me what healthy family relationships actually look like. These people celebrated my success, stood up for me when I was attacked, and provided emotional support without expecting anything in return. My business mentor, who knew nothing about my family situation until recently, pointed out something that had never occurred to me. She said that most successful entrepreneurs learn to recognize and eliminate toxic relationships that drain their energy and resources. I had been so focused on my obligation as a daughter that I had never considered whether my parents' treatment of me met basic standards of respect and support. Today, I am genuinely happy in a way that I had not been for years. I wake up excited about my work, confident in my abilities, and secure in my relationships. I have a beautiful apartment that I am decorating for my own enjoyment rather than saving every dollar for family emergencies. I am dating someone wonderful who appreciates my success and ambition instead of viewing them as threats or sources of funding. The most ironic twist in this entire story is that I am now more successful than my mother ever imagined possible, precisely because I am no longer being held back by her manipulation and exploitation. The daughter she called useless has built a thriving business, strong relationships, and genuine financial security. Meanwhile, she is working retail to help pay bills she could have easily afforded if she had not been so focused on luxury spending and status symbols. I sometimes wonder if my mother understands the connection between her actions and their consequences, but I have stopped caring about her perspective on the situation. My energy is now focused on building the life I want rather than managing the dysfunction I inherited. Looking back, I wish I had recognized the manipulation sooner and set boundaries earlier. But I am grateful that I finally found the courage to demand better treatment and expose the truth about our family dynamics. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to stop enabling their destructive behavior, even when they hate you for it. The useless daughter turned out to be pretty useful after all, just not in the ways her mother expected. And that transformation has made all the difference in building a life worth living. Have you ever been in a situation where family members took advantage of your success while undermining your confidence? How do you think karma works in family relationships? When someone has been manipulated for years, I would love to hear Your thoughts in the comments below about family loyalty versus self-respect, and whether you think I handled this situation correctly or if there was a better way to expose the truth. Please hit that like button if this story resonated with your own experiences with family drama, and make sure to subscribe for more real-life stories about standing up for yourself and finding your true worth. Share this video with anyone who might be dealing with similar family manipulation, because sometimes we all need to hear that it is okay to put ourselves first. Thank you so much for listening to my story, and I hope it reminds you that your success and happiness matter regardless of what anyone else thinks. Remember that chosen family can be just as powerful as blood family, and sometimes walking away from toxicity is the most loving thing you can do for everyone involved, including yourself.